Hi everyone, hope you're well. Bit more information about assignment 2 today. I've been receiving a few requests and there's a few people I think that are starting to get a bit anxious about this assignment, so I wanted to try and provide a bit more information to help with that. So essentially, once you've talked about what consumer behavior is, and you've talked about the importance of it, and you've sort of defined what archetype personality is and archetypes are about, then I want you to try and develop these two sort of profiles of the two different types of consumers. Okay, so target consumer 1 might be one type of archetype, then you might give the characteristics of that archetype. You can start giving that information based on the table that you have in your text, table 5.8 of your text, and we'll look at a specific example in a minute. In that table, they also talk about the types of brands people might use, so you can do that. Then you can add to that characterization with some additional information. I've given a couple of examples of articles you could use here. I'll have a look at those. Then you might add a bit more information about motivations. And once you've done that, then we'll start looking at how you might apply that to a context. So let's just look at this in a little bit more depth. Just see if I can get my slide to progress. Okay, so here's the table from your textbook. Now, I haven't shown you this specifically before, but if we were looking at the innocent, for example, so you could talk about, here's some information about the innocent. They want to experience paradise, that's that core desire. Their goal is to be happy, their fear is doing wrong, and their strategy is to do things right. So for me, looking at that, that tells me something about them, but that also gives me information that I'm then going to be able to use when I talk about how this person's motivated. So we'll get to that in a minute. Over here on this end where it talks about this archetype as a consumer, innocent consumers are generally like to find brands they can trust and stick to. They believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They also like brands and products that make life simple. For example, products such as user-friendly computers. So this example brands, there's some example brands that build on this archetype. Now, you might choose to go that way or not, because we're not really talking about branding here. We're just building a picture of a person. But here is where you talk about the sort of brands that they like. Okay, so that's fairly basic. That's where you start. But like I said in the subject outline, you need to take it a bit further than that. So let's look at how you might do that. Oh, hang on, before we do, sorry, I'm just going to have to go to my presentation and go into some, what are they called? Sources I've got open for you. So here we go. Hopefully you can see this okay. This is the Pearson 12 Archetype System. This is one of the links that I gave you. So basically this group have developed, Carol Pearson I think leads this group, they've developed a way of measuring a person's brand personality archetype. They've developed this 12 archetype system. Now I've also, just before we go into this, there's also a paper here I've put a link to that talks about a bit about the Pearson-Marr archetype indicator, which is what we're looking at in that website. How they use Jung's archetypes to sort of measure people, you can see here. And they base their descriptions of the archetypes on the Pearson-Marr indicator and type concepts from Myers-Briggs. So I've put the link to both of those. So here's another tool that you might be able to use to describe your innocent a bit more. So Pearson-Marr describe innocence as having a basic trust in others and also relying too much on others. And there's 4 different hypotheses there about the innocent, which they go on to test. Now, you need to read, if you wanted to use this information, you just need to read through this article to see what they test and what they find. But there's a bit more of a description about the innocent. There's a description here of all of the different archetypes, so that might be helpful for you. Okay, so going back to this Pearson 12 type archetype indicator. So there's some good reading in here about what the archetype system is and how it was derived and all that sort of thing, which is nice background information. There's a really nice table down here. Now, the reason this table is helpful is because it compares the different terms that are used. So, for example, in the textbook, you see the 2 different there's the archetype names in the table that we look at, but there's also the brand asset valuator archetypes on 148. This table is really nice because it gives a comparison between the term that's used to categorize each of those archetypes. So for example, we talk about the innocent in the textbook, but here that innocent is called the idealist. Now, if you scroll down further, you can go in, click on this, and it'll tell you a bit more about the idealist. Okay, so that's doing a fair bit of your, that should get you there. Okay, I feel like that's doing a fair bit of what you need to do, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an information. So the article we looked at was the McPeak, but there's also another one. Sorry about my punctuation there. There's Hatala and Rodemar. Now, this shouldn't, if I was marking this, I'd put a cross through that T. It shouldn't be there, and a cross through that bracket. Okay, so that's how you might characterize your archetype. So we know from all of that the innocence is sometimes referred to as the idealist. We can give you some information about the brands they like, their goals, the type of consumers they are. Once we do that, then we can start looking at what motivates these consumers. Sorry, we'll take that out. So in terms of motivation, when you go to chapter 6, where you talk about motivation, I think last time I gave an example, I talked about how you might do it using Maslow's hierarchy, but today I'd like to talk about motivation using internal and external influences, just to give you an example. So let's just have a quick look. We'll go out of here again and have a quick look at, where is it? This is your textbook, okay? So this is the textbook page, well, I'd have to go back and have a look. I think it's about 179, where it talks about internal and external motivation. So internal motivation is where somebody is motivated from within, okay? That it's intrinsic, it encourages people to, people act because they're driven from within. Extrinsic or external motivation is when people are motivated by something external to themselves to engage in a behavior. So going back to the innocent, remember they said they're motivated by doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. So the internal motivation is to understand what the right thing is and do it. The external motivation is worrying what people might think about them. So that's just simply applying this theory to that archetype. So there's more information here, and this again is where I'd expect you to do a bit further reading, okay? Look for other textbooks or journal articles that talk about extrinsic and intrinsic motivations, or external and internal motivations. If you want to have a bit of depth of discussion, you might take that a bit further. And so you could click on these, see these endnotes. They take you, maybe they don't, they should. Here, they take you to the item that talks about this. I think it was 10 I clicked on, wasn't it? Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So there's if you went to the endnote in your chapter, there's the article that's talking about that. So that's how you start to go a bit further. Then you look at what references that article uses and which people cite this article to sort of build your theoretical discussion. Okay, some of you will get into that more than others, depending on the sort of level of your understanding and the marks you want to receive, but that's where you might build in your theory. Okay, so once you've done those things, you wouldn't have it all on the same slide. I've just put it like this just to demonstrate to you, but then you'll have a sense of who your consumer 1 and consumer 2 are. Now you'd go through the same process for consumer 2, obviously. Okay, let's go out of this. Okay, once you've got that information, basically then you need to talk about how your marketing mix might vary for target consumer 1 and target consumer 2. Now, there may be some ways where so you can see over here I've put same or different to consumer 1. So you're not always going to change everything. You might have a consistent way of advertising that goes out to everybody, consistent sort of promotion where you've got the same imagery, the same people, the same songs, for example. I'm thinking of the Windscreens O'Brien ads. They're used internationally, but they're just slightly different. They've got the same format wherever they're used, but they're changed subtly to suit the different cultures. So you might have an overarching promotion strategy that you want to use for your organization, but you might vary it slightly for each of your target consumers. Now, I guess I've put a few examples of how you might think about the elements of the marketing mix. So for example, do you think your innocent is more, prefers form over function? They like things that keep things, they like, I think in our diagram it talked about brands that help them keep life stay simple or keep life simple. So potentially they prefer function over form. Whoever your second target consumer is might be different in that respect. Pricing might be something that is relevant or isn't relevant. Again, same with distribution or promotion. So you only need to make 2 to 3 recommendations. You don't need to change every aspect of the marketing mix, but this is the way you can think about it. So you might talk about the fact that considering our marketing mix, the things that are important to target consumer 1 are and target consumer 2 are. Therefore, these are the recommendations we'd make for each target consumer based on the evidence above. So any recommendation you make really should naturally come out of your out of the evidence that you've provided on the previous slide. So you shouldn't be coming up with anything new here. It's just about applying the theory to this type of consumer and saying, okay, so the innocent prefers simplicity. So in our product, we're going to come up with something that's easy to use, simple to use, and that might help us target that group. Where, say, the outlaw, for example, is another archetype. Say they're our opposite. They want to destroy what's not working. They're enticed by forbidden fruit. They like to get away with things. They like to do things that are a bit edgy. So they might be more interested in, say, something that's technologically advanced and a bit different and a bit out there, and they want to test it even though it's a bit risky. So for them, maybe your product is slightly different. Or maybe you'd say, look, we're not going to change our product or our pricing. That's going to remain static. But innocents might like to go to markets, they might like to go to the farmers markets and buy things, where the outlaw might like to be on the black, what is it, the black net? Sorry, excuse me. The dark, wherever you go, where it's kind of black market, but on the internet, they might like to go somewhere that's a bit risky to get it. Excuse my ignorance there. And then, so this is getting a bit long. That's basically all you need to do. Down here, I just want you to see, you can't see it. I might, sorry. I'd like to move it up. There's the links that I used and a couple extra to help you. Basically down here I say, I just need to move my screencast down. Here it says, recommendations should be based on the information from your research, RE archetypes and motivations. You don't need to change everything and you need to justify what you do change. I'm going to leave that at that. Good luck with it. And if you still have any concerns or issues, please come back to me. Okay, I hope this helps. Thanks. Bye.